She left me at the altar. And 3 weeks later, I watched her crumble when her mother announced me as her new husband. The moment Cheryl vanished on our wedding day, she didn't just leave behind a church full of stunned guests. She left behind 4 years of loyalty, one engagement ring worth 3 months of my salary, and a man too numb to even cry. I stood there in front of hundreds, still gripping the ring while whispers spread like wildfire through the pews. She ran? No. Note? Did he cheat? But no, I didn't cheat. I didn't lie. I didn't waver once in loving her. I just wasn't enough. The last thing she said to me, through a text that came 2 hours later, was, "I realized I don't love you. I want to be free. Free." After everything I did for her, she wanted freedom. I paid her college debt, funded her mother's surgery, let her stay rent-free in my condo for 2 years while she figured herself out. I had no idea she meant figuring out how to run straight back into the arms of John, her high school sweetheart, a man who had disappeared the first time life, demanded commitment. She left me humiliated. But that's not what broke me. What broke me was what came after. The silence from her. The polite avoidance from mutual friends. The refund requests from vendors. The way her mother, Patricia, was the only one who called to ask how I was doing. And then, without warning, Patricia said something over tea that I will never forget. "If she doesn't want you, maybe someone else does." She looked me in the eyes, calm, steady. And I realized something in that moment. Cheryl's betrayal didn't destroy me. It simply rewrote the beginning of a story I didn't know I was meant to tell. And when Patricia stood before a stunned wedding crowd and said, "I didn't marry Mr. Lawson today because I've already married Travis," it wasn't revenge. It was just symmetry. She left me standing at the altar, and now I sit at the head of her family's table. As her stepfather. Would you like me to move on to part 2 now, continuing directly from here? My name is Travis, 34 years old. I own a mid-sized construction firm in the city. Nothing flashy, but enough to live well. I don't drink, I don't smoke, and I've never cheated on a woman in my life. I met Cheryl at a friend's engagement party 4 years ago. She wore a pale blue dress that didn't fit the mood of the event, and yet everyone's eyes found her. Not because of the dress, but because of her silence. She didn't talk much. She just watched. Later, when I offered her a drink, she looked at me and said, "You don't seem like someone who belongs here." I laughed. "Because I'm holding juice instead of wine?" She smirked. "No, because you're not trying to impress anyone." That's how it started. We were opposites. She liked art galleries and late-night poetry readings. I preferred quiet evenings and slow jazz. She was messy. I was organized. She spent. I saved. But somehow it worked. Cheryl was the kind of woman who made you feel like she needed saving. Just enough to trigger every man's protector instinct, but never too much to seem helpless. She told me her father had passed when she was 19. She didn't get along with her extended family. She didn't trust easily, and I, like a fool, took all of that as an invitation. When her car broke down 2 months after we started dating, I paid for repairs. When she lost her job a year in, I told her to stay at my place rent-free until she got back on her feet. When she cried about not affording her mom's heart medication, I covered it, no questions asked, because I loved her. And I wanted to believe she loved me too. Her mother, Patricia, was the only one who ever thanked me. She'd invite me over for dinner now and then, offer me leftovers for work the next day, or hand me little handwritten notes with quotes she thought I'd like. "I see the way you look at her," Patricia once told me. "You're too good for her," I laughed. "No one's too good for love." She smiled but didn't respond. I thought she was just being protective. Now I know she was warning me. 2 years into our relationship, I proposed. She said yes. Her eyes watered. She hugged me tightly, and I remember thinking in that moment, finally. Something that lasts. I should have known better. The months that followed the engagement were strange. Cheryl was colder. She stopped asking about my day. She started sleeping with her phone screen turned away from me. She left the apartment, more often, always claiming she was meeting friends or going to yoga. I asked if she was having second thoughts. She brushed me off. Every bride gets cold feet. Don't overthink it. And then came the day. Our wedding was simple, tasteful, nothing extravagant, just a modest ceremony at a restored chapel outside the city. White flowers, soft music, close friends and family. Everyone arrived on time, everyone, except Cheryl. At first I thought she was just late. Makeup, hair, nerves, whatever. But 15 minutes turned to 30. 30 turned to 60. The murmurs started. My best man kept pacing. The priest kept glancing at his watch. Eventually, someone checked the bridal room. Empty. Her phone? Turned off? I didn't get a call. I didn't get a message. Until hours later, when I sat in the back seat of my car, still in my suit, staring blankly out the window. "I'm sorry, Travis," the message read. "I realized I don't love you. I want to be free." No explanation, no apology, just freedom. Patricia called me 2 days later. I didn't want to answer, but I did. She asked if I was okay. I told her, no. She asked if I could meet her. I said, "Why?" She hesitated, then said, "Because I owe you the truth." I went. I don't know why. Maybe I needed someone to admit it was real, that I hadn't imagined the last 4 years. We sat on the back porch of her house. She poured us tea like nothing had happened. I noticed her hand trembled slightly as she set the cup down. "She's with someone else, isn't she?" I asked. She nodded slowly. "John, her ex, from college. He came back into town last month." I should have felt anger, rage, betrayal, but all I felt was emptiness. She ran to him. "She ran because she's a coward," Patricia said quietly. "She doesn't know what love is, Travis, but I do." I looked at her, really looked at her. Patricia wasn't like Cheryl. She didn't shrink under pressure. She didn't pretend. Her eyes were tired, but firm. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small envelope. Inside was a check. $15,000. "What is this?" I asked. "Everything you spent on her wedding, flowers, venue, food. You shouldn't have to carry that loss." I stared at it, stunned. She added, "I sold the family heirloom necklace for it. Cheryl doesn't know." I didn't take the check. I didn't even say thank you. I just stared at her. Because in that moment, something inside me shifted. The woman sitting in front of me didn't owe me anything, but she was trying to right someone else's wrong. She looked at me, tears quietly, brimming in her eyes. "I would have married someone like you." I didn't say anything, but I thought about that moment every night for the next 3 weeks until she called again. This time with a strange request. "Travis," she said, "I'm getting married next week. I want you there." I said nothing. She added, "I want Cheryl to see the man she lost." The wedding day arrived faster than I expected. Patricia's invitation had sat on my kitchen counter for a week, untouched. I stared at it every morning, every night, wondering if going would be petty, or if it was exactly what I needed. And then, on the morning of the ceremony, I picked it up, put on a suit, and called for a car. When I arrived, the venue was already filling. Rows of neatly arranged chairs stretched under strings of lights, and the soft hum of polite conversation floated through the air. Patricia hadn't told anyone I was coming, especially not Cheryl. She wanted it to be a surprise. I walked in, alone. Heads turned. Some guests recognized me from Cheryl's almost wedding just 3 weeks earlier. Their expressions wavered between confusion and discomfort. I ignored them. I had learned how to do that now. And then I saw her. Cheryl. She was standing near the dessert table in a pastel pink dress, laughing about something with a friend. But when she glanced up and spotted me, the laughter died instantly. Her smile froze. Her grip tightened around her glass. She took a step toward me, hesitated, then turned and walked away. She didn't even say hello. Fine. That part of us was dead now anyway. The ceremony was set to begin just after sunset. A golden haze settled over the venue as Patricia stood beside her fiancé at the altar, Mr. Lawson, a man I'd never met, never even seen in pictures. The priest spoke with reverence, asking if anyone had objections. Patricia turned to him and said, "Before we proceed, I have something to say." Gasps rippled through the guests. Even I didn't know what was coming. Patricia stepped forward, faced the crowd, and calmly said, "I can't marry this man today, because I already married someone else." A collective inhale swept through the space. Confusion spread like wildfire. Someone dropped their wine glass. She turned to me, and in that second, Cheryl realized what was happening. Patricia walked down the aisle, her heels echoing against the stone path. She came to my side, took my hand, and looked at her daughter. "I married Travis this morning. In private. By choice." Cheryl's face turned white. "No," she whispered. "You're lying." Patricia's voice was steady. "You left him. You humiliated him. And I watched the best man I've ever met suffer because of it." Cheryl took a step forward, her hands shaking. "You married my ex-fiancé? You're my mother." Patricia didn't blink. "And you're my daughter, one I love, but not one I respect." The silence that followed was unbearable. I finally spoke. My voice was calm. Too calm. "You didn't just walk out on a wedding, Cheryl. You walked out on someone who would have given you everything. And now, I'm giving everything to someone who actually sees me." Cheryl looked between us, lips trembling. "You're my stepfather now?" I nodded. "Seems like it." She laughed once. A short, broken sound. "This is insane." Patricia's voice dropped. "What's insane is watching my daughter toss away a man like him and thinking there wouldn't be consequences." But Cheryl wasn't finished. Her ego wouldn't. "Let her be. You're doing this to punish me." I stared at her. "No, Cheryl, this isn't punishment, it's protection. For me." "You think I'm going to accept this?" she hissed. "You think I'm going to just call you Dad now? You think you've won?" Patricia turned to her. "This was never a game. But if it was, yes, he's already won." Cheryl looked around at the guests, at the judgmental glances, the whispers, the disgust hidden behind cocktail smiles. She wasn't the star of the show anymore. She was just the girl who left a good man standing at the altar, now watching him stand proudly beside her mother. She stormed off, heels pounding against the floor, vanishing into the parking lot. Patricia looked at me, her fingers gently tightening around mine. "I didn't do this to hurt her. I did this to remind her that real love exists, and she walked away from it." I didn't respond, because part of me wanted to believe that, and part of me just didn't care anymore. The crowd eventually quieted. A few people applauded softly. Mr. Lawson left without a word, and Patricia, standing beneath the soft glow of string lights, smiled like a woman who had finally made peace with something inside herself. The ceremony was over. But the conflict? It had only just begun. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling of Patricia's guest room, the same room Cheryl had once slept in when she visited her mother. The same walls, the same floral curtains, the same faint smell of roses from the old diffuser in the corner, but everything felt different now. My chest was tight, not from regret, but from the weight of everything I hadn't allowed myself to feel until now. Cheryl's face when Patricia made the announcement, her hands trembling, her mouth open, eyes wide, the disbelief, the horror. It kept replaying in my mind, over and over. I should have felt victorious. I should have smiled at the thought of her finally tasting humiliation, but I didn't. All I felt was hollow. I turned on my side. The phone lit up on the nightstand. 4 missed calls. Cheryl. She was calling again. For days after the ceremony, it didn't stop. She called from unknown numbers. She sent messages, long and short, some angry, others desperate. How could you do this? You were supposed to love me. This is revenge, isn't it? Be honest. Please call me back, just once. I ignored everyone, because the truth is, I didn't know what to say. I wasn't blameless. Somewhere in this mess, I had crossed a line too. I didn't marry Patricia to make a point. But I also didn't marry her with a clean heart. It was complicated. She knew it. I knew it. And Cheryl, well, Cheryl refused to understand it. One afternoon, I stood outside my office building and saw her waiting near the entrance. Sunglasses, oversized coat, arms crossed. She looked tired, like she hadn't slept either. When she saw me, she ran over. "Travis, please," she said, her voice cracking. "Just talk to me." I didn't answer. I kept walking. She followed. "You really married my mother?" "Yes." "Why?" I stopped, looked at her. "Because when you left me at the altar, she was the only person who treated me like a human being." Her eyes welled with tears. "But she's my mother," I shrugged. "And I was your fiancé." She reached for my arm, but I pulled away. "I was scared," she said softly. That day, I panicked. John came back and everything I thought I wanted suddenly felt like a trap. "Was I the trap?" I asked. She hesitated. "No, you were the safe choice, the one who always showed up, the one who would never leave." I laughed bitterly. "And that made me disposable?" "No, it made everything too easy." I didn't want to settle. My voice turned cold. "Then don't." She grabbed my hand again, tighter this time. "But I made a mistake. I see that now." John left again. A week after the wedding was called off. He said he wasn't ready either. I nodded. "So now you come back." She didn't deny it. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she whispered. "But you did." A long pause. She wiped her eyes, then looked at me with something close to desperation. "Are you happy with her?" I thought about that for a moment. Was I? Patricia was kind, steady, fiercely intelligent. She didn't play games, didn't manipulate, didn't disappear when things got hard. She'd stood beside me without asking for anything in return, but I wasn't sure if I loved her. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Still, I looked Cheryl in the eyes and said, "Yes, I am." She flinched like I had slapped her. "I wish I could take it back," she whispered. "All of it." I shook my head. "But you can't." And then, for the first time in 4 years, I turned my back on Cheryl and walked away, without guilt, without longing, without hesitation. That night, I sat beside Patricia in the living room. She was reading. I was quiet. She looked up and asked, "Did you see her today?" I nodded. She was waiting for me outside work. "What did she say?" "That she regrets everything." Patricia's eyes didn't waver. "Do you believe her?" "I do." She paused. "Do you forgive her?" "I don't know." We sat in silence for a while longer, then Patricia said something I wasn't expecting. "If your heart is still there, even a little, then we should talk about that." I looked at her. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," she replied, "that I won't be a rebound. I married you because I believed in you. But I also need you to be honest, with yourself, not just with me." Her honesty stunned me, not because it was harsh, but because it was rare. "I don't love Cheryl anymore," I said. "Are you sure?" I stared down at my hands. "I'm sure I don't trust her, and that's worse." Patricia nodded slowly. "Then let's start from there." For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could finally breathe, because pain is sharp. Betrayal cuts. Deep, but clarity. Clarity is the thing that finally stops the bleeding. A week later, everything exploded. It started with a news headline. "Scandal at Lawson Holdings. Former CEO's ex-fiancé accused of corporate espionage. I was in my office when my assistant ran in, phone in hand, face pale. "Sir, you need to see this." I scrolled through the article slowly, my jaw tightening with every line. The report detailed an anonymous leak, emails, message logs, and account access trails that led back to Cheryl. It accused her of using confidential financial data from her time living with me to assist John in undermining Lawson Holdings, Patricia's former fiancé's company. John, it turned out, hadn't left the picture as quietly as Cheryl claimed. The two of them had been involved not just romantically, but strategically. According to the emails, they had planned to leverage Patricia's company connections and merge them with one of John's startups. When Patricia pulled out of the Yalkin marriage and I revealed myself as her new husband, their entire scheme fell apart. And now? Now Cheryl was under investigation. I stared at the screen, disbelief and fury twisting inside me. I wasn't surprised that John was behind something like this. But Cheryl? The same woman who had cried in front of me, begged me to talk, said she regretted everything. She had been using me even before the altar. I wanted to believe it wasn't true. I needed to believe the woman I once loved wasn't that cold. But the facts didn't care what I needed. The access logs pointed to her device. The forwarded financial documents carried her digital signature. Everything she touched. Tainted. The same night, Patricia came into my office at home, holding a manila envelope in her hands. "They're calling for an indictment," she said. "John's fled the country. Cheryl, she's facing real time." Didn't say anything. She placed the folder on the table in front of me. "You should read this." It was a full report. Names, dates, screenshots. There was no doubt left. Patricia sat across from me. I should have known. She always had this way of smiling and lying at the same time. I looked up. Why didn't she just walk away? Why do all this? "Because she didn't just want love," Patricia said softly. "She wanted power, and she thought you were the key." The betrayal cut deeper than I expected. It wasn't about heartbreak anymore. It wasn't even about humiliation. It was about trust. And I had given her all of mine. The next morning, Cheryl showed up at our gate. She looked wrecked. No makeup, clothes wrinkled, hair pulled into a loose knot. There were bags under her eyes, and for once, no mask of pride. "Travis, please," she said when the guard called me to the door. "I need to talk to you." I didn't respond, just stood there. "They're saying I betrayed you," she said, voice trembling. "That I leaked everything to John. But it wasn't like that. I didn't know he was going to use it like that. I was just helping him get started." I narrowed my eyes. "You sent him my company's financial records." "I didn't think it would hurt you," she whispered. "And that's the problem," I said. "You never think. You just do what you want, then say sorry later." She fell to her knees, right there in front of the gate. "Please, don't let them ruin my life. I'll do anything. Just talk to Patricia. Make it go away." I leaned down, my voice flat. "You already ruined your own life. You just used my name to do it." Tears streamed down her face. "You don't understand." I was desperate. "John said if we could just—" I cut her off. "John said. John promised. John needed. That's all I ever hear. What about what you chose? What about the night you left me standing there? What about the lies you looked me in the eye and told?" She sobbed harder. "I was stupid," she said. "But I didn't mean to destroy you." "But you did." I turned and walked away. She screamed after me, voice broken and raw. "Travis, please don't do this. You're my last chance." And that was the truth. I was her last chance, and I let her fall. It was raining the day everything finally broke. The sky was a deep, unforgiving gray. Thunder echoed across the horizon, and the streets shimmered under the weight of heavy rain. I stood inside the courthouse lobby, watching through the glass as Cheryl arrived, escorted by 2 lawyers and a drenched umbrella handler. Her hands were cuffed, but loosely, more symbolic than functional. Her face was pale, makeup running slightly, her hair pulled back so tight it made her cheekbones more prominent than usual. She looked like a ghost of the woman I used to know. Patricia stood beside me, calm, composed. She wore black, no jewelry, no expression, just silence. "She's going to try one more time," she said softly. "I know. The charges were serious. Corporate espionage, violation of non-disclosure agreements, misuse of confidential information. The evidence against Cheryl was overwhelming, and while she didn't directly profit, she had facilitated it all. The court had already frozen her accounts and subpoenaed her electronic records. Patricia's attorneys had done their job well. Too well. We entered the courtroom together. The benches were packed. Media wasn't allowed, but that didn't stop the tension from hanging like smoke in the air. Even the judge looked exhausted before the hearing began. Cheryl sat at the defendant's table, and for the first time, her eyes didn't search the room for me. They already knew where I was. And then the judge motioned for witness testimony. The court clerk called my name. I rose, walked to the stand, swore the oath, sat. Her eyes met mine. I kept my voice steady. I answered every question, confirmed that Cheryl had access to company files, that she had shared a home with me, that the information had been shared through her laptop, that no one else had access. Each word chipped away at her, until finally her lawyer stood up and said, "Mr. Travis, in your opinion, do you believe Miss Cheryl intended to hurt your company?" I paused. Everything in the courtroom stilled. Cheryl looked up, tears brimming, and I said, "No." A murmur passed through the benches. I don't believe she intended to hurt the company. I believe she intended to benefit herself. And she didn't care who got hurt in the process. The distinction mattered. She wasn't a villain in her own story, but she wasn't innocent either. When I stepped down, she didn't look at me again. The hearing wrapped quickly. The judge ordered Cheryl into supervised release while awaiting the final sentencing. She wouldn't go to prison that day, but it was coming. A few months maybe more, depending on how far Patricia wanted to take it. We walked out of the courtroom into the heavy silence of rain. Reporters were waiting behind the barriers, snapping photos, but it wasn't like a celebrity scandal. No one cheered, no one gasped, just the sound of shutters and the pitiful curiosity of strangers. Patricia turned to me in the parking garage. "We can stop here, let her carry the record, the debt, the shame, but we don't have to send her to prison." "You know that," I looked at her. "You want to stop?" "No, I'm giving you the choice." I didn't answer right away. I looked across the lot. Cheryl stood alone under a parking garage light, shoulders soaked, shivering in the rain. No umbrella. No one left to shield her. Her lawyers were gone. John was gone. Everyone had vanished. And I realized something. This was never about punishment. It was about closure. She looked up suddenly, as if sensing I was watching. Her eyes found mine. She didn't wave. She didn't call out. She just stared. Her lips trembled, but she didn't cry. Not this time, she mouthed one word. "Sorry." I nodded once. That was all. We drove home in silence. Patricia didn't ask for details. She just took my hand. She knew I'd made my choice. The next morning, I signed the withdrawal of further charges. She would still carry the judgment, still pay the fines, still lose the trust of every employer for the rest of her life, but I wouldn't bury her. Not like this. Not anymore. A week passed. Then 2. I started sleeping again. The nightmares stopped. I could breathe, eat, laugh even. But I wasn't happy, not yet. One evening, Patricia walked into my office at home. I was organizing old files, trying to distract myself from the thoughts that always returned at night. She stood in the doorway, watching. "You're still angry," she said. I looked up. "No, just tired." She nodded, walked in, sat across from me. "I know we rushed this." I didn't answer. "I meant every word when I married you. But I won't pretend like this isn't complicated. I don't regret it, I said. But you wonder what it means. Yeah, I admitted. She sighed. Then let's do something bold. Let's reset. Reset? Yes. Let's take the next 6 months and start over. As friends, as equals. No pressure, no expectations. Just two people learning each other. Again. You want to pause our marriage? I want it to be real. For both of us. I looked at her for a long time. She was strong, dignified, beautiful, in the way that came from surviving life rather than being untouched by it. And she was offering me something Cheryl never had. Honesty. I nodded. Okay. And just like that, for the first time in months, something inside me felt light. That night, I received one final message from Cheryl. It wasn't long. You were the best thing that ever happened to me. I see that now. I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope you find the kind of love you gave so freely. I wasn't ready for it. Maybe I never will be. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. The past wasn't something I needed to carry anymore, and whatever came next, I would walk toward it without anger, without shame, and without looking back. Because sometimes the real revenge isn't destruction, it's peace. And I had finally found mine. 6 months passed. Not quickly, not easily, but steadily. The media frenzy around Cheryl's case faded, as all headlines eventually do. One by one, the whispers disappeared. People found new scandals to devour. But for me, the silence that followed wasn't peace at first. It was strange. Like walking out of a storm and not knowing how to live in calm weather. But I adjusted. Patricia and I followed through on our agreement. We paused the marriage, not in a legal sense, but in spirit. We lived in the same house, shared the same space, but treated each other as individuals, not obligations. We spoke as equals, ate meals together, took long walks in the evening. But there were no expectations, and it turned out, somewhere in that stillness, we discovered something deeper than convenience or grief. We discovered respect, that thing most people fake and few truly offer. One afternoon, while reviewing an architectural contract at the office, my secretary came in with a nervous smile. Sir, there's a woman downstairs who says she knows you. She didn't give a last name, but I held up a hand. Is her name Cheryl? She nodded slowly. I told her to send Cheryl up, not because I needed to see her, but because I didn't fear her anymore. She entered wearing a plain gray dress, hair tied loosely, no makeup, no performance. This time, no staged expressions, just real exhaustion. She looked smaller, quieter. Her pride, it seemed, had long since been abandoned. Thank you for seeing me, she said. I offered her the chair across from my desk. Nothing more. She sat, folded her hands in her lap. I don't want to stay long, she said. I just wanted to return something. She reached into her purse and slid a small velvet box across the table. I opened it. Inside was the engagement ring, still gleaming, still flawless, still intact. I never sold it, she whispered. I couldn't. I said nothing. I wanted you to know that I'm moving. Out of the city. A friend has a startup in the north. He said I can help out, no contract, just part-time. I'm not expecting anything, I needed to return this. She stood. No speech, no crying, just quiet acceptance. But before she reached the door, I spoke. Cheryl, she turned slightly. You know what the worst part was? She hesitated, then asked softly, What? It wasn't the altar. It wasn't the texts. It wasn't even the courtroom. I looked her dead in the eyes. It was realizing that everything I gave you, every ounce of loyalty, trust, protection, was wasted on someone who only loved herself. Her lips trembled. I know, I nodded. And now you'll live with that for the rest of your life. She didn't cry. She didn't argue. She just walked out. That was the last time I saw her. 3 weeks later, the auction notice hit the public record. Cheryl had been forced to sell her apartment to repay court fines. Her car was repossessed. Her accounts still frozen. Her reputation ruined. I never lifted a finger. I didn't need to. Life had already delivered my revenge. Meanwhile, things changed for me, permanently. Moonmark Holdings, the rebranded name of my original firm, now had 3 offices across the state. We'd secured a 7-figure contract to develop part of the Northern Industrial Expansion Project. I hired back every staff member who had stayed loyal during the fake bankruptcy, gave each one of them double their salary, and those who laughed at my downfall, I didn't blacklist them. I didn't sabotage them. I just bought out the companies they worked for. Quietly, without attention. I replaced their positions with better people. Made the transitions clean and professional. They never even knew I was behind it until their severance letters arrived with my signature at the bottom. That was the kind of revenge I chose. Silent, legal, ruthless. The kind that doesn't just end a chapter, it rewrites the book. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the sky burned peach and gold, Patricia stood by the balcony with 2 mugs of coffee. She handed one to me. She was in bare feet, a soft beige sweater wrapped around her, hair tied loosely, eyes warm and quiet. "You know what I realized?" she asked. "What's that?" I never felt married before, not even to my first husband. I always felt held in place, like a role I was supposed to perform. And now? Now, she said, turning to face me, I feel like I'm exactly where I chose to be. I smiled. I'm glad. She sipped her coffee. Do you still want to stay paused? I shook my head. No. Sure? More than ever. She leaned her head on my shoulder, and we stood there in silence, the last bits of light flickering over the skyline. In the distance, my phone buzzed once. I didn't check it. I didn't need to. There was nothing left behind me worth answering. No voice from the past worth hearing. Cheryl was a storm I survived. Patricia was the calm that followed. But I was the man who had finally learned to build, not just buildings, but boundaries. Love wasn't about sacrifice. It wasn't about begging. It wasn't even about who stayed. It was about who chose you at your worst and never once thought of leaving. And that was my revenge. Not the lawsuits, not the downfall, not the courtroom. The real revenge was peace, silence, happiness. I didn't destroy Cheryl. I didn't ruin John. I didn't scream, threaten, or fight. I just lived better without them forever.